Well, he's the former Republican governor of New Mexico and now the Libertarian Party's presidential nominee, who says he has a path to victory in this election. Joining us now, Gary Johnson. Governor, welcome to Fox News Sunday.
Chris, thanks.
Your campaign manager says you have a two-part strategy to win the White House. The first part is that you have to get on that stage for the presidential debate starting September 26th. In the Real Clear Politics average of recent polls, you're at 8%. So you need to reach 15% to get on the stage. Would you agree that if you don't get into the debates, it's game over?
Winning the election, yes, I would say game over, winning the election. But the Presidential Debate Commission has identified 5 polls. We're at 10% flat on those 5 polls, and that's an increase, really, of probably about 4% consensus over the last 6 or 7 weeks. So we're optimistic that we're going to actually get into the debates. We're spending money right now in many states. In 5 states right now, I'm at 16%. So I'm just really optimistic.
Okay, so now you get in the debate stage, and now this brings us to phase 2. Which is, as I understand it, is to keep both Clinton and Trump from reaching the majority of 270 electoral votes to be elected president, throw the race into the House of Representatives where you say that you could win, and in that case, each state gets 1 vote, that you could win on a second ballot. How does that happen?
Well, the object is to win outright, and it's not impossible that if we go into the presidential debates with the polarization of Clinton and Trump, that we might actually run the table on all this. And I'm talking about me and Bill Weld, 2 former Republican governors re-elected in heavily Democrat states.
Bill Weld, former governor of Massachusetts.
Yeah, I don't think there's any arguing that we did make differences in our state, being fiscally conservative, socially inclusive. I'll add to that we're really skeptical about intervening militarily to achieve regime change that I think has resulted in a less safe world. So I think that we represent about 60% of Americans with that philosophical belief.
So let's get into that, because you say the key to your candidacy is if people sit down and compare you to Clinton and Trump on the issues, they're going to pick you. So let's do a lightning round. Quick questions, quick answers on a variety of issues. International trade.
Free trade, supporting IPP. It's a good thing. Free trade, more jobs.
The
TPP.
The Pacific Trade Deal.
Yes. We're the only ones that support it.
Immigration.
Make it as easy as possible to come into this country and work. To be able to get a work visa. A work visa should entail a background check and a Social Security card. Don't build a wall across the border. These are hard-working individuals that are taking jobs that U.S. citizens don't want.
What about the 11 million people, and that's just an arbitrary number, but the millions of people who are already in this country illegally?
Complete misunderstanding of why they're here in the first place. The reason they're here in the first place is you cannot get a work visa to come into this country and work, and they're hardworking, cream of the crop when it comes to workers. So you or I in that same position where jobs exist in the United States that U.S. citizens don't want, you or I would be crossing illegally to take those jobs just like they are doing.
So you would give them amnesty?
I would set up where they could come in the door, get a work visa, as long as they've been law-abiding. With regard to citizenship, there needs to be a pathway to citizenship. Look, with regard to those that are in the country that are undocumented, they're not going to jump the line, but that's part of comprehensive immigration reform that Bill Weld and I think we can bring Democrats and Republicans to the table over. Look, Hillary or Clinton, isn't the polarization in Congress going to be greater than ever? Does anybody believe that anything is going to get better in Congress? Our pitch is the third alternative, which is a couple of libertarians in the middle, hiring a bipartisan administration, everybody libertarian-leaning, but I think you could make a case that that third scenario might work.
I want to drill down on a couple of issues. You want to cut spending by 20%, you say.
Which is balancing the federal budget.
And you call for eliminating these departments, the IRS, Commerce, Education, the FDA, DEA, Drug Enforcement, and the National Security Agency.
Governor, actually, the ones that I'm citing, and by the way,
but all those are on your website.
Well, not on my website. You might read that in some other website. But look, we're not getting elected dictator here or king. We're getting elected president, vice president. So
but you don't think any of those agencies do any good?
Well, in the case of education, in the case of commerce, and there are some vital functions in these agencies, but do they require an entire agency? I don't think so. But education, commerce, housing and urban development, Homeland Security. Why is Homeland Security an agency unto itself? Shouldn't it be a part of the FBI? Those are the ones that I am advocating out of the chute.
Then there are taxes. You want to eliminate the federal income tax. You want to eliminate the federal corporate tax and replace them with a consumption tax, a national sales tax. Experts on both sides of the aisle say that this would be highly regressive, that rich folk are going to make out like bandits, and it's going to end up hitting the poor and the middle class.
Well, of course, we're not getting elected dictator or king.
Well, I know, but what you're saying there, Governor, is that let me just make. But you're saying, when you say we're not going to be elected dictator, you're saying don't take my policies seriously because they won't get through.
Take them very seriously, but count on certainty that we're going to always support taxes going lower. We're going to always support being in business being easier, rules and regulations not getting worse, getting better. That said, if I could wave a magic wand, I would eliminate income tax, corporate tax. I would replace it with one federal consumption tax. I put up the fair tax as a template for how you accomplish one federal consumption tax. You're right about a consumption tax being regressive. The way that the fair tax deals with that is it issues everyone a prebate check of $200 a month that allows everyone to pay the consumption tax up to the point of the poverty level. I maintain that if we had zero corporate tax, which you and I pay for, I maintain that that would create tens of millions of jobs and that it would also issue pink slips to 80% of Washington
the result of that, again,
lobbyists.
the experts say is, okay, even if you have the prebate, okay, now that helps the poor, but the rich are still going to make out because there's no tax on their income, there's no tax on their, let me just finish, there's no tax on their savings, so now you're hitting the middle class. They're going to pay more.
I'm going to argue that the more money you make, the more money you consume, the more tax you're going to pay. This is a proposal, the fair tax is a proposal that has been before Congress for about 10 years. Every year, 80 congressmen and women sign on to it. So it's been pretty well vetted out there.
Okay. I want to switch to foreign policy. You say you are a non-interventionist. You say that the threat from radical Islam is, quote, overblown. You don't want boots on the ground. You say that airstrikes, either from planes or from drones, have, quote, unintended consequences. So the question is, what's your plan to stop ISIS?
Well, I do believe that if you want to look at ISIS, that they are regionally contained. Think of them as sands through an hourglass. We're going to see those sands through the hourglass. There was a poll a couple of weeks ago.
Wait a minute. I mean, what happens to the attack in Belgium? What happened to the attack in San Bernardino? What about the attacks in France?
We can call these ISIS-inspired attacks. Do they come directly, geographically from ISIS?
Well, in the case of France, they'd seem to, yes.
Well, Chris, a poll among active military personnel 2 weeks ago. Who do they favor for president of the United States? Me. So what are they saying? What they're saying is judicious use of the military. If we're attacked, we're going to attack back, but the fact that we involve ourselves in regime change has resulted in the unintended consequence of making things worse, not better, and nobody's standing up to this. Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, not intentional. They go in, they support the opposition in Libya and Syria. The opposition's aligned with ISIS. We arm the opposition. Now those arms are in ISIS hands. This is the unintended consequence of our foreign policy.
So basically, we're going to contain ISIS. We're not going to eradicate it?
Well, if we eradicate it, and hey, you know, not that we're going to continue to stay engaged in that, but there'll be a void when that gets eliminated. We didn't even hear about ISIS until 2 years ago. This was Al-Qaeda until it became ISIS, and wipe out ISIS and it'll be something else. Look, the biggest threat in the world right now is North Korea. We need to deal with the civil war in Syria. That's joining hands with Russia diplomatically to see that through. Biggest threat in the world, North Korea. We need to join hands with China to deal with that diplomatically.
Got one more question for you. We've got less than a minute left. Until January, you were the CEO of something called Cannabis Sativa, which is, I guess I pronounced that correctly, it's a marijuana marketing company. Question, of all the things in the world you could be involved with, why sell pot?
Well, in this case, marijuana products, which directly compete with legal prescription drugs on the medical front, don't kill anybody. Not one documented death, and yet these drugs do, marijuana, cannabis does compete, does provide that relief. So it seems to me that there needs to be research and development in this area that can't currently happen because marijuana is listed as a Class 1 narcotic. As President of the United States, I would delist marijuana as a Class 1 narcotic. This is going to be an issue that is left up to the states, just like alcohol. And then on the recreational side of this, Chris, I have always believed that legalizing marijuana will lead to less overall substance abuse because it's so much safer than everything else that's out there, starting with alcohol.
Governor Johnson, thank you.
Chris, thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
You know how crazy this election cycle is. I might be the next president. You know that, right?
Well, and I hope you'll give me your first interview in the White House.
There we go. There we go.
Safe travels on the campaign trail,
sir. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Up next, we'll bring back our Sunday group to discuss Donald Trump's move to broaden his base and his changing rhetoric on deportation.